This is the reason why you should buy. And we're not asking the most important question, the reason why it was important for them, in their heart of hearts. Like, that's a sale. Then we're going to see results, the mindset. Going into every opportunity, saying to yourself, I would love to have the business, but I don't need the business. When they talk about building their organization just through referral, that means they're missing it. The internet almost shut down because they're like, are you blind? Do you not know what's going on out there? Do you not see what's happening?
You just did 250,000 cold calls. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm so excited to have our guest on today, Andy Paul. I'm really, really grateful that you're here to share some of those wonderful sales nuggets. I'm going to be your host, Crispin Cruz, on the PIPE podcast. Of course, PIPE stands for Process, Initiatives, Prospecting, and Experiences, all as it pertains to sales. So thank you so much for joining us today, Andy. Thank you.
Well, Crispin, thank you for having me.
Yeah, that's
I love
great.
that. I love the intro video. That was fun.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. We try to make it fun.
I recognize lots of people.
Oh, that's good. That's good. That means I must be doing something right. So I appreciate that. So, hey, I just like to, for those that maybe haven't heard of you, they should have. If they're in sales and they're practicing their craft and they're getting better and they're trying to grow their businesses and grow themselves every single day, you should have already heard of Andy Paul. But if they haven't, tell them what part of the world you run, Andy, and just give them a little background information on yourself.
Sure. Gosh, I've been doing this for a long time, and and yeah, I think I've seen everything there is to see. But world keeps changing, which is why it's so much fun to do my own podcast, be on a podcast like this. Talk with a lot of smart people and keep on learning as the world continues to evolve. But yeah, I've been a salesperson for, like I said, a really long time. Started my own company. It's been in the tech business for 25 years before I started my own company. I've had my own company now for 23 years, working with companies that help them become more effective sellers, really focus on what does it take to actually win, and what's the value of focusing on winning as opposed to just competing, which unfortunately I think sort of been an emphasis recently, just sort of like participation prizes in sales, because we've seen win rates drop to really low levels in so many sectors. So try to help companies focus on how do we win, and how do we win a majority of the opportunities that we work on, really just a sort of your base standard. So consult with companies. I had a podcast for 7.5 years, actually starting a new podcast here shortly. That's going to focus on sales effectiveness and win rates, and sort of my next chapter that I'm really passionate about helping companies with. And they'll come out no later than June 1st. We're still
wonderful. We're right on the heels of that. That's great.
Yeah, we're narrowing on a formal launch date, but I could do it a little bit differently. Instead of an interview podcast, it's going to be, every episode will be like a roundtable discussion. We'll have myself plus 2 or 3 other guests and talk about issues relating to winning, right?
That's awesome.
And
that's awesome.
Yeah, I'm very excited about it.
Yeah, it sounds like it, and something different, right? Because as we evolve, in this, and we've done this, we've taken on this burden ourselves. We have actually made the conscious decision that we're going to be in sales. and maybe a few people might think, okay, I was just talking with Ricky Kalman, on an earlier show, and your mindset. Maybe somebody maybe you want to peer in between those 6 inches between your ears to say to yourself, maybe I don't even know if should I be doing this? Should I be in sales? Am I that crazy to do it?
Well, but that's interesting perspective, because I really is one of the subjects of my latest book, Sell Without Selling Out, is
Right.
yeah, how do you be yourself in sales, right?
Mhm.
And
That-
succeed while doing so. That there's been so much pressure put on people in sales to conform especially in the last 10, 15, 20 years. And it's some of the pressure comes from technology, some of it comes from sales leaders and managers themselves. And it doesn't have to be this way. It is people have this vision in their minds of, well, this is what a successful salesperson is like, and it sounds a little, a
Yeah.
little sleazy, a little pushy, a little salesy.
Mhm.
Does not have to be that way. In fact, in my experience, those people who have been most consistently successful in this profession have been very human centric, very customer focused, very unlike the stereotype. And so,
Yeah.
part of my mission is to help people understand that the way to become successful in this business is I mean, there's multiple parts to it, but it's at heart, it's become the best version of you, right? And try to be
Right.
somebody else. Yes, you may listen to your boss says, hey, listen to recordings of phone calls and, everybody be like Mike. It's like, well, no, you can't all be like Mike. Mike can be Mike. You have to be the best version of Crispin. That will help you,
Yeah.
not only succeed, but also find fulfillment in this work we're doing. Because as you were just alluding to, it's stressful. It's a lot of competition day in and day out.
Mhm.
Yeah, are we crazy being in? Well, yeah, maybe, but we do it because we stay in it because we find fulfillment in doing
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
But
And look, go
what I
ahead.
was
Go
just
ahead.
gonna say is, one of the ironies is that we can't. We're in it to help, ultimately to help, right? Is the studies have shown that people that stay in sales, yes, money's a motivator at part, but they know that if you do a good job, the money will be the output, the outcome, right?
That's right.
But what you're getting out of in the meantime is you're helping companies or individuals solve problems and achieve things that are important to them in their world. And we can't do that. We can't have that impact on our buyers and our customers if we don't win their business.
Yeah.
It's that simple. So winning is at the heart of succeeding in the business, but at the heart of staying in the business.
I love it. I love it. And if you're not writing some of these nuggets down, you better be. That's great. And so when we talk about that, making sure that you're doing it for the right reasons.
Mm,
I mean, that's a level of transparency. Yeah, because if you don't think our prospects see it, then
of course they do.
I
Yeah.
I mean, how many times have you gone into, or maybe that you've coached, teams about, or that you've talked to them, about providing, services from your organization, or even in your book, how many times have you really focused on teams and made sure that they understand that if you're not doing X, Y, and Z, and I know this is a phrase that's being coined, more often now, your authentic self,
Mm.
right? But if you're not doing these things, then you're doing it the wrong way. What does that look like in your world, Andy?
Yeah. Well, I think that part of that stems from this sort of lack of authenticity, stems from this belief that sellers have that they have to act a certain way. And, and it's like, I don't know, people want to cover up the fact they're in sales. It always sort of annoys me. I'll get a cold email from someone, I'll read it that somebody's put out. It's like, yeah, we want to partner with you. Well, you don't partner with me. You want to sell me something, and that's fine. Just say you want to sell me something, right? It's like, and when you say that, and I've posted about this on LinkedIn, people sort of go crazy. It's like, well, but we are trying to quote unquote partner, and it's like, no, I mean, you're not fooling anybody. The customer knows why you're there.
That's right.
So be proud of it. Don't hide from it. Yes, I'm in sales, and let's do this the right way. I want to create the type of experience for you as a buyer that makes you want to do business with me, right? Because I know, just and you alluded to it earlier, it's these crowded markets we're in. Every product virtually looks the same, feels the same, is basically priced the same. The differentiation is going to be you, the seller. So
right.
lean into it. Be the best version of you can be.
It's good. It's good. And so then you're leaning into it. You're doing that for, and you are building that connection with your prospect. and I've had it happen to me too, Andy, where I go in and I'll win a piece of business, I'll win the sale, right? Which
Mhm.
I get jacked about that. Like,
For sure.
when I win a piece of business, I I love it, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm in there and but I got to tell you, there have been times that the prospect has actually said to me, "You know what, Crispin, the services that you provide, along the lines of same your competitor. We looked
Mhm.
at two others, right, when we were
Mhm.
deciding on whether or not we were going to move forward with your
Sure.
program. Yeah, we were looking at making it your pricing was close. It's in the ballpark, same kind of thing, right? Um, but there was just something different about you. There
Mm.
was just something different about you, and that's why we're moving forward,
Yeah.
right?
Well,
And
that's it. That's what people have to lean into, this fact that you could be selling something. I've sold things from, well, it's my first non-professional sales job was selling women's shoes at JCPenney, but in a professional world, selling computer systems back when they used to be housed on site, rooms full of metal, to large complex communication systems, nine-figure type deals.
mhm,
I was the difference in all of them, right? I
mm,
mean, these
yeah,
large complex technologies. Yeah, certainly I'm not a technologist, but conversant as a layperson. And yes, it was a team effort that got these deals done, but it was the humans involved, me and the team, that made the difference at the end of the day.
yeah,
And anytime you forget that, you're doing yourself a disservice,
right.
because again, more than ever, this is the case. You just gave a perfect example. They couldn't really tell the difference between you and your competitors. They put a board over everybody's head. You're about the same height, but there was something different about you. You made them feel different than the competitors did.
Mhm,
That's what
yeah,
you're striving for. I mean,
yeah,
I talk about this in the book and talk about in other cases. It's just, I was working for startups where oftentimes before I started my own company, where we were competing for those really large pieces of business. Some cases, the business we were competing for was larger than our total revenue as a company.
mm,
And you're thinking to yourself, on the surface of it, there's no way we're going to win this business.
yeah,
But then when you do and you ask the customer why, it's oftentimes boiled down to something, well, you're the only vendor that made me feel understood.
mm,
Well, that's a human characteristic that we paid attention, we focused, we listened, we asked great questions. We wanted to go beyond just knowing something to really fully understanding it and making the customer feel like we understood their unique perspective on their challenges and what the outcomes they wanted to achieve. That just
mm.
takes being a human being.
Oh my gosh. It's I mean, and it sounds so easy and it's so hard. And one of the things that I'd like to,
Sure.
I love your perspective on this, because when we're talking again with other teams and we're saying to them, listen, we understand that you as the salesperson have a deep desire to tell your own story, but
Mm,
your story is not important. The
no.
only story that's important is the client, is the prospect story,
Mhm.
right? And so we try so hard, Andy, to focus and refocus them on, yeah, it's great to know your product. Yeah, I mean, and if you would like to feature and benefit your prospect to death, go ahead. You're going to sound like every single, you're going to sound like every other single salesperson out there. You're going to sound like every one of your competitors. Throw it on the wall and see if it sticks, right? But if you really want to get to the root of what the compelling reason may be for your prospect to buy from you, then ask, have a conversation, right, and
Yeah.
listen. I mean,
Well, it's the mindset though. And this is the way we socialize salespeople. And part of it is they come into the profession with these mindsets, because there's, and I don't know if you know Dawn Dieter Schmeltz, who's a professor at Kansas State University and head of their undergraduate sales degree program. And she tells a story about with her first year students, or first year in her program, these 18, 19-year-old kids with no sales experience, no sales background. They do role play and they default to being super salesy. It's like it's in the water, right? It's like it's in the air. It's because popular culture, TV, movies, so on. They hear that. So when sellers come into sales, and unfortunately, it's sort of amplified by much of the training they get. They think my job is to go persuade somebody to buy my product.
Right.
Well, if you think your job is to go persuade somebody to buy your product, then you really don't have to really understand the things that are really driving the decision, the compelling reasons, because regardless of what they are, my job's still to persuade you to buy my product. And as I write about in the book, that's not your job as a salesperson. Your job as a salesperson is to listen to your buyers, understand the things that are most important to them in terms of the challenges they face and the outcomes they want to achieve, and then help them get that.
Yeah.
That's our job. Our job is to listen, make sure we understand what's really most important to them, and then help them get that. And in the book, I paraphrase the great Zig Ziglar's expression about, if you help enough other people get what's most important to them in life, you will get what's most important to you in life. And that should be what's motivating you as a seller.
Yeah, that's right. Oh, it's so good. All right, let's you've brushed around it. Now I want to just drive right into it. Let's talk about your book, Sell Without Selling Out. So, so Andy, picture this, like someone's reading the book, they're getting towards the end, right? They're flipping those last few pages. And what are the three things that you're hoping that they walk away with? What are kind of the top lessons that you've got in there that just kind of off the top of your head? What are you hoping that they really walk away with and say, these are the things that you need to, here are the things that you can do better, or here are the things that you should walk away with after reading this book?
Well, one, and we sort of touched on all of them. One is that you as the seller are the differentiator. At the end of the day, it's you. You're going to be the difference between winning and losing. And the buyer's experience with you is going to be, the difference between winning and losing, which is, that's the good news and that's the bad news. That's the good news is, hey, that experience, you have complete control over that, right? As a seller, I don't have control over the product and what it does, its features and functions. I don't have control over its price. I do have control over how I work with the buyer and how they experience me. So that's the good news. The bad news is when you lose, it's also because of you, but you can always improve. So knowing that you're in control, I think is really one of the key lessons of the book. And that's, the subtitle of the book is The Guide to Success on Your Own Terms, because we may study methodologies, sales methodologies, we train a certain methodologies. That's fine. We're all sum total of all of the things that have influenced us. But as I like to say, if there's 1 million salespeople in the world, I know there's more, but just using for the example, 1 million salespeople in the world, there's 1 million unique ways of selling. So lean into that, lean in, like I said, become the best version of you. So that's one, is you're in charge, you're in control. Second is that success really revolves around what I wrote about that I called the 4 pillars of selling in, contrasting that with selling out, which is it's just these innate human attributes we all have, which is, I call it connection, curiosity, understanding, generosity. We're wired as human beings to want to connect with other people. And this is through this connection, that's how we build credibility and trust with our buyers. It's interesting. There's this chorus of voices in sales these days. Oh, the buyers don't want to be connected with you. They don't want to have relationships with you. And it's just dead wrong. Anybody that says that is just dead wrong. We have not repealed the law of physics when it comes to human relationships. People want to connect at a human level with the people they're dealing with. So, and it's, like I said, essential for credibility and trust building, curiosity. Again, we're all born curious. We all have the same amount of curiosity. Yeah. In some cases, unfortunately, it gets trained out of people, but we all have this ability to ask the same questions if we're just give freedom to that. And so in the book, I have a whole chapter about 6 question types to sort of you can use to help sort of stimulate your own curiosity. The third level is understanding. Again, we are curious, but we're curious because we want to understand the world around us. We had our first grandchild born a couple weeks ago, and
congratulations.
Thank you. But I use examples, when he was born and suddenly he's in the light, it's like the curiosity starts, right? I'm trying to make sense of what's happening around me.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we need to make sense of what's happening around with the buyer and understand from their perspective. People mentioned this before, is there's this sort of gap between knowing something and understanding it. And we train sellers, go ask your discovery questions and you're going to gather this amount of information. Okay, but why is that important? Why is that important to the buyer? How's that driving the decision? What write about in the book is, every single buyer has one thing that's more important than all the others. And I've seen this in every deal, maybe if you have as well, and you're selling, every deal I've done throughout the entire course of my career, there's always one thing that's more important than all the others for the buyer. And if I can understand what that is, then suddenly I have an advantage. Because I know most of my competitors haven't gone that extra step to really find out and understand what that is. And here's an example of this, is that, and people are freaking out about AI and ChatGPT and so on.
I was just having a conversation about it earlier today.
Yeah. And without a doubt, it's having an impact. It's going to continue to have an impact on sales, but it has limitations. And here's a perfect example of it, is that every buyer that you deal with, and they could be a company like 10 others, let's say you're selling into a vertical market and it's like 10 other companies. Sellers go in and say, well, hey, we've worked with a dozen companies just like yours, so we know what you're going through, and we train them to say that. What the buyer's hearing is, they don't really understand me because I've got my own perspective about my business. We operate just a little bit differently than everybody else. We've got our own way of doing things. We've got our own concerns. Everybody has that.
That's right.
And so when you go in and just say, well, yeah, we've worked with a lot of companies just like yours, you think it's comforting. It's not comforting to them. It's just the opposite. They're saying, you're not listening to me. And this is one of the things that AI is not going to be able to do. It's not going to be able to find out that thing that's really unique perspective. There was they've been using AI-based systems and assisting medical decision-making for patients. And there was a study, I saw a report on a study that had been done that showed that in this one case, patients adopted this tool, but then usage started falling off. And they went and asked the patients, why was it? And they said, well, yeah, it understands certain things, but I don't feel pain the same way other people do. I'm feeling this more intensely than someone else in these dimensions, right? It's that unique perspective everybody carries about their own situation that the AI system couldn't understand, and they're not going to be able to. Well, this is a role for humans, and you can find that out if you keep asking the questions and you keep digging down deeper and finding. And so that's part of this understanding. When you have that level of understanding, then suddenly you stand out in the crowd of other sellers, because who else has gone to that level? And then the fourth pillar is generosity. Is how do we effectively use and deliver value to help the buyer make their decision? Right. And it is a very simple test for that. And I write about this in the book, is how do you define value in sales? Well, from the buyer's perspective, what value really is progress. Meaning, as a result of me as a buyer investing my time and attention in you, am I now closer to making a decision than I was before I invested in you? So every time you interact with the buyer, doesn't matter it's an email or a voicemail or a Zoom call or an in-person call, you have that basic requirement as a seller. What value am I providing to the buyer in this interaction that's going to help them move closer to making a decision as a result of investing their time and attention in me? Meaning, as a result of reading my email, are they closer to making a decision? Or talking with you on a Zoom call, are they closer to making the decision? And if they're not, why'd you do it?
Yep.
Why'd you do it?
Yeah, that's right.
I mean, you wasted their time and yours.
That's right.
And you don't get very many opportunities to interact with buyers. So why would you do that? So what I write about in the book is part of being intentional about being a valuable resource to the buyer is that as a seller, you should be able to go through your pipeline and say, look, for every sales qualified opportunity that exists, I can answer these two questions. A, what does the buyer need from me right now, today, in order to make progress toward making a decision? Doesn't mean all the way. It could be just a little bit of progress, but progress. And two, as a result of giving them that value, what steps will they commit to take?
Right.
And if you
Right.
don't know the answer to those questions, if you're sitting there and wondering what to do next as a seller, if you can't answer those questions, 2 questions, simple questions about every opportunity, qualified opportunity in your pipeline, well, then now you know what you should be doing. You should be talking to them and asking the questions, digging deeper, and making sure you understand that.
Yeah. And how many times have we gone in and I mean, those 2 questions are so it's so valuable because it's telling. Like, it is truly telling. Like, when you just mentioned pipeline, like, that's one piece of the puzzle, right? And
Mhm.
so and I've said this before, is it pipeline or pipe dream? I mean, if you can't answer those 2 you can't answer those 2 questions, then is it
Well,
pipeline or pipe dream? I mean,
it's
that's
pipe dream in most cases. I mean, think about it. So there was a book that came out at the beginning of 2022, I think it was called Strikingly Different Selling, written by, co-authored by several executives from Franklin Covey organization, Jennifer Colosimo, and a couple other people. And I had Jennifer on my podcast. Well, one of the striking things in the book it talks about is they had commissioned, as part of writing the book, they'd commissioned an external research firm to go survey companies. I would say it was about 5,500 companies in multiple industry segments globally. And the average win rate, in this one B2B, average win rate on deals 100K and higher, which 100K, kind of modest size deals these days, 17%. Meaning that on average, B2B sellers are winning less than 1 of every 5 of their most qualified opportunities. Why? What's, I mean, it's the buyer telling us, I'm not getting anything out of this, right? I'm not getting anything out of my interaction. So when I do decide to buy from you, I'm buying from you in spite of you, not because of you. Right? If you're a seller and your win rate is 20% or 30% even, as I say, basically, if your win rate is less than 50%, yeah, the buyer's making the decision to buy from you despite you, not because of you. And why do you want to be in that position?
right.
Right? You're not in control of your own destiny at that point. You're not having the influence, or you're not providing the value to the buyer. And so as an individual seller, that should be your goal. Is, look, I'm going to win 50. I'm going to win more than I lose. 50.1%. That should be my goal that I'm aiming for as a seller. If I'm doing that, because your win rate is the buyer's vote on the value of the experience they had with you. Simplest way to look at it.
It's so good. Oh my gosh. It's so
And,
good.
if it's less than 50%, it's not good.
Yeah. So shifting gears for a minute.
Sure.
What do you recommend? Like, what do you talk to sellers about when they get to this point to where they're, you want to make sure that they don't hit this, they don't hit this wall of burnout, that they don't have, that you've recognized that, yeah, there needs to be some tuning here, the 6 inches between their ears. Like, what do you do to try to help people with that piece of it? Andy, what are some of the things that you do to either coach or to try and break them out of that cycle of negativity?
Well, it's building confidence, and you build confidence through winning. And so it's really giving people the experience of winning, and winning the right way. This is the thing that, you sort of hear when you talk about, win rates and so on. It's people say, well, yeah, people go to any lengths to win. They'll say anything. It's like, yeah, you can do that a couple times, but you can't build a career out of doing that, because the buyers figure you out, right?
That's right.
Companies figure you out. So, and it was really one of the primary motivations I had for writing this most recent book, was that we've been getting worse at selling, not better. Despite all the advantages we have with technology and so on, is you look at the data points that exist relative to certainly quota attainment. We've seen that drop year after year, and win rates have been falling. It's like, why? We've taken our eye off the ball. And so for a seller, it's a couple things. One is, if I'm leading a team, what I want to do is I want to give people a taste of success. That's one of my top priorities as a frontline manager or a sales team leader, is how can I have as broad a number of people in the team experience success? Because what do people want to do once they've experienced success? They want to keep succeeding, right? They're highly motivated to keep learning and doing, improving and doing the things they want to do to, in order to succeed. So yeah, that is, as again, if somebody's working for me, that's what I try to do. If I'm coaching them, I try to help them find, well, what are the things that we can identify that you can succeed at and start building some confidence with as quickly as possible. And then build on that. And then the second thing is help people feel like they have permission to be themselves. And this is so important, is as I mentioned before, everybody's feeling the pressure to conform, right? Let's say you have a conversational intelligence system and everybody's listening to calls. Well, unfortunately, the way most managers use it, and the problem's not the technology, it's how it's being used by managers. It's like, all right, everybody listen to Mike's calls, right? I want you to say it just like Mike does. And it's like, it's not what you want. No. What you say is, Mike does a good job. What do you hear Mike doing that you can incorporate into what you're doing?
That's right.
That aligns with who you are, your skills, your strengths. Let's see if we can work through that and find out these things that you can start adding. Well, that's a more productive way to do it. But instead, it's all like, be like Mike. Or, we have this activity-centric approach to sales these days, which, there's always been, we've always had ratios, right? Number of calls will generate number of proposals, generate number of orders. As long as people have been selling, those ratios have existed. But it's really gone over the top again in the last, somewhat driven by technology, in the last 10, 15, 20 years, where managers really focused on, well, how many calls are you making? In order, and then the ratios, if you make 100 calls, 100 dials, I get 5 conversations. On the 5 conversations, I get 1 meeting or whatever.
Right.
It's like, well, don't make 100 calls. Make 20 dials and have 5 conversations. Have you ever thought about that? No. It's like a mystery to people. I remember having a conversation with a guy, CRO of a publicly traded SaaS company. And I said, well, what was your goal? And this was a few years ago. It's right before the pandemic. So, what are your goals for this coming year? Well, we're going to grow sales by X%. So how are you going to do that? Well, we've gotten really good at top of funnel. So we're, in terms of marketing and, putting, what's I call it, elegantly, crap in the top of the funnel. We're going to put a bunch of stuff at the top of the funnel, and we're hiring a ton of new SDRs and everybody, handling those inbound leads and passing them off to AEs. And I said to him, well, I happen to know about the company. I said, so you previously said your win rate's like 19%. Yeah. I said, well, wouldn't it be cheaper and faster just to improve your win rate?
It's so funny.
Because you'd save a ton of money on, if you 5% increase in win rate. I don't know the exact percentage. I actually were working with a partner, we're building a model to determine this, but it's like, let's say you have a 20% drop in your marketing spend because you don't need as much pipeline.
That's right.
No. Right. You wouldn't need as many SDRs. And so it's just, he clearly had never thought about it that way, because all about more activity, more stuff, as opposed to, well, let's just do better.
Yeah. I had a similar experience with one of our clients, Andy. I mean, and exactly what you're talking about now. They were getting inbound leads and they weren't converting them. And I said, if it sounds like a sales call, then it is a sales call, right? How about if we change that paradigm and start having conversations with our prospect? How about if we actually try to connect with them at their level and really understand why they're looking for the service? And we moved their conversions because they were inbound. So,
sure,
their prospect was in their buy cycle, but we moved that from 25% to just over 50. And it's
amazing what you can do when you focus on the execution in a human-centric fashion.
I know.
The way you show up makes such a difference. So we, a couple partners launched last fall this thing we call Selling School. We're actually going to be rebranding it here shortly. But it's about helping sellers, teaching sellers, and coaching sellers how to improve their win rates using the lessons from Sell Without Selling Out.
Mhm.
And a couple things really striking is one is almost all the sellers who showed up didn't know their win rates.
Mm.
So I'd say maybe 5% knew their win rates.
Wow.
So if the sellers don't know it, then the managers aren't tracking it, right? Because it's not being emphasized.
Right.
Which is just nuts, because as an individual contributor, this is the most important metric for you. This is your KPI that you should be laser focused on. Is what's my win rate? Because I said before, it's the buyer's vote on the value they're getting from you. So if your win rate's low, the buyer's saying, yeah, you're not helping me get my job done.
That's exactly right.
So we have this thing. It's just like, well, gosh, why aren't we focused on this?
Mhm.
And when just people start showing up differently, to your example, you had this great improvement you saw with your client. Excuse me, most of it's just you start showing up with a different attitude, right? When you suddenly say, I'm here to help you, I'm here to listen, to understand what's most important to you and help you get that. The buyer, they get it, right? They feel it, as opposed to you showing up and saying, I'm here to persuade you to buy my product.
Right. Or let me read this. Let me read this script, right?
Yeah, well, let me read the script, and we'll. I tell people is if you show up with the buyer and you ask your standard list of questions, scripted questions, whatever you call them, what we've done is we've trained the buyers to give us rote scripted answers.
Mm.
So if you have buyer, they're in market, chances are they're probably talking to you and 5 to 10 other vendors.
Right.
Everybody's basically showing up and asking the questions in the exact same way. You're getting these superficial rote answers.
Yep.
But if you show up differently and you show up, you're there to help, and you're sincerely interested and curious about them and the things that are driving them, things that are most important to them, well, then you get invited to go to a level deeper, right? They're going to start sharing information with you that they weren't sharing with the other people, because they're giving them their scripted answers.
That's right. That's right.
It makes a huge difference. And again, it comes from just, at least in the sales dimension, just being a better human. As one of my sayings I use these days is, we're pretty good at training humans how to be sellers. We're not very good at training sellers how to be human.
No.
And if we do that, then we really do provide a service for the people that work for us, the salespeople, and showing them that there is a better way, and it's a more natural way for them.
Yeah. So, part of the pipe is also, one of the words there is process. How do you, I just want you to share this with our viewers and listeners. How do you do it all, Andy? I mean, you're writing a book, you've got, clients that you serve, you're launching this new podcast. I mean, you've got all of these things happening. How do you manage it? How do you manage the time to do it?
Depends who you ask. Not very well in some cases. Well, it's, for me, my career has been one of various chapters, is the way I like to call it. So I started my career salesperson, selling large computer systems. That was getting this great direct sales experience out in the field, making cold calls every day, and so on. It was my MBA, right? I was selling to a fair amount of time selling into the construction industry. I was brand new in sales and business, but I had this innate curiosity, and I always wondered why CEOs gave me a lot of time. When I was 21, I looked 12. And because I showed up and was sincerely interested in them. And I learned so much from those early customers about business and how to sell to them. If you listen, oftentimes customers will tell you how to get their business. So that was sort of one chapter. And then I moved to a second chapter where I sort of got into the startup world. At first I was at Apple, the very early days of Apple. But then startup world, worked for, 7 different startups, eventually running sales teams and growing sales teams, which was fun. Because we were selling these really large, I said, complex systems, 7, 8, 9-figure deals, no track record, no brand name, selling against really big companies. Hugely valuable experience learning how to sell in that environment. And I was selling around the world, countries around everywhere but Antarctica, as I like to say. Wow, it was a great chapter. I mean, I traveled extensively, just learned a ton, grew some successful companies, but then sort of decided, hey, spending too much time away from home. I was missing things at home. Decided I wanted to be the dad that was going to be present for everything. So really one of the driving motivations to start my own company. But, it's a different chapter, and sort of learned how to do consulting because, I'd never done consulting before, and learned what people wanted to pay me to do. But then, had changed my personal life and moved from San Diego to New York, and was when I got married for the second time, and really didn't know what to do, and had this idea of writing a book. And a lot of consultants write books, sort of calling card, but this one actually turned out to be something that people liked and had sort of a following, and that sort of led then to thinking about starting this podcast, which was again, had no idea it was going to turn into 1,200 episodes, and eventually sold the podcast a few years ago. And a new chapter coming up now is starting a new podcast, and it's got a different focus. We're really focused on win rates and sales effectiveness, and moving the ball forward on that. And you have another book in the works. So how do I fit it all in? I'm just having a great time. That's sort of I think that's more than anything. It's sort of it. I mean, I wish I had. When you love what you do, and I'm past most people's retirement age, and still loving it and learning and excited about things that the impact we can have with people out there that are in this profession that I love so much. So another chapter, and see how long it goes.
That's great. That's great. Well, so glad you were on. So this is where we kind of pivot to, and this is and for those that have watched the Pipe podcast before, they know this is my tribute, to James Lipton, and we ask some questions, and if you haven't followed the Inside the Actors Studio before, but we call it the Sales Arbiter 7. So we're and this is really, all the stuff that you talked about, really interesting, Andy. But this is what the listeners,
That's right.
this is what they want to hear about. So, so I'm going to jump right into these. So, what is your favorite word, Andrew? What's your favorite word?
You're going to laugh at this because it's a word that no one uses, but I'm always fascinated by this word. It has nothing to do with business. So the word is defenestrate.
Defenestrate.
Do you know what it means?
No, I do not.
It means to throw someone out a window.
Who would have ever thought? See?
Well, I mean, it's like my first thought was, well, how often does that happen that you need to have a word for it? That was my first, when I first learned the word, it's like, how often does this happen? You need to have a word for throwing something out a window. But there it is. So there you are, the definition. It's like, so it's always fascinated me, words like that have such a single small purpose that exist. And it's like, how did we come up with that?
I love it. Thank you. So pivoting, what's your least favorite word, Andy?
Probably no.
No.
Yeah.
I think I know why.
I mean, I my wife and family will attest to this. It's just it's I'm a little stubborn, but no, probably no.
No, that's great. Thank you. What's something that could make your day?
Oh, just family, spending time with my wife and kids. I said we have a new grandchild. That, I mean, as I said, I had this sort of, when I transitioned to working on my own, it was really driven by the desire to spend more time with kids and mine were just sort of starting junior high, sort of at that point, or finishing elementary and starting junior high. And literally for 8 years, I was the dad who was at every single event, every sporting event, every, musical theater performance, dance performance. I was there. I think people began to sort of take pity on me after a while. It's like, doesn't he have a job or something? But yeah, I just made that decision at that time to sort of step back and, didn't work as hard as I could have perhaps during those, in terms of, as many prospects and clients as I could have had. Just really, shaped my life around that. And yeah, never regretted it.
No, I'm sure not. I'm sure you haven't. So what's something that could ruin your day?
Ruin my day. That's hard to do. I'm really an optimistic type person, glass half full. So I don't know, probably raining when I'm on vacation in Hawaii.
That's something that could ruin your day for sure.
Yeah. My wife and I were just in Hawaii a month or so ago, and while it didn't rain, they were having these unusual weather conditions where it's extremely windy, to the point where you couldn't sit we like sitting on chairs in the shade, but you couldn't sit on the beach. It's just like a sandstorm every day when you're out there.
Yeah.
And yet we still had a good time. So
that's great. That's great. What's a noise or sound that you love?
Oh. As a more recent example, it's just with the new grandchild just vocalizing. That's when you hear them, just beginning to figure out, oh, I can make sound. And when I make sound, people come running. Nice. So yeah, it just makes me laugh when I hear him do it, because he's
there we go.
Yeah. Also makes me laugh because the parents are beginning. They don't know what they're in for.
No, they have no idea.
That makes them smile too. When the baby's crying, it's like, it's just the beginning.
Right. So on the opposite side of that, what noise or sound do you hate?
Gosh. Probably loud cars. I live in my wife and I, we split time between San Diego and New York. I'm here in San Diego today, and we live very close to the bay, and it's beautiful. But the road we're on like Sunday nights, there's the local, I don't know, the club or whatever, but people out there, cars that are tuned to make loud noises, and they sort of run a circuit around the blocks we're on. It's like, I could do without that.
Fast and Furious. Yep, that's it.
Yeah, all small little, Hondas and Subarus and so on. I mean, the big thing here now is these intersection takeovers, where they get the major intersections and they'll get 24 cars, depending on the size of the intersection. They completely block it. They do a circle. They form a circle and just very dangerous. But they also do that about 2 blocks away. So yeah.
You're right in the heart of it. Yeah.
Making me sound like a grumpy old man, but no, it's I was never a car guy in my life, so maybe that's part of it too.
There we go. See, our viewers and listeners didn't know that about you either.
Yeah.
What profession other than your own would you have liked to attempt?
Oh, that's a good one. Well, possibly being a what I call a real writer.
You are a real. Well, hey, hold on, hold on. I've got a book to prove it. Hold on.
Yeah. Well, when I was, I started really late in life. I didn't publish my first book. That's until I was old. And so I was writing most of it in New York City, and there are these writers' rooms in New York City where you can basically rent a desk in a large, quiet space. And I'd look at you had to sign in, and I'd look at the roster people, signing in. It's like, oh my God, that's a famous script writer and movie director. And here's a famous author. It's like, oh my God, I'm writing my little business book here. Felt sort of like a little bit of a fraud. But Yeah, I've always, a huge reader. I love reading. I've, one of the reasons I love doing the podcast is a chance to talk to authors, but reading's just been such a big part of my life. I always wish I could have been like, a novelist. Still hope to write a novel someday.
Really? A mystery?
Yeah. I'm a big mystery
love
thriller.
Story? I mean, what are we talking about?
No, a mystery thriller. Yeah, I love those type of books. And so I've got one I've been working on for the last year amongst everything else you're trying to do. We'll see. It's hopefully we'll get it done before it's too late.
I'm sure you will. Okay. So winding down, how do they find you, Andy? How do they find you?
Sure.
How if people want to reach out to you, if they want to talk with you about, challenges that they're having with their organizations, they want to grow. What does that look like? Tell
the easiest way is LinkedIn. Just message me on LinkedIn. I think I've been there. Just usual preamble / real Andy Paul.
Mm-hmm.
And actually my LinkedIn inbox is busier than my real email inbox these days. But yeah, reach out to me there, and glad to start a conversation. You can visit my website, andypaul.com. It's up there on that's my LinkedIn profile, but andypaul.com. And sure, you can go back and listen to my old podcast, Sales Enablement Podcast. Tons of great content there, or soon a new podcast, which we'll be announcing. We'll be announcing shortly.
I saw some comments coming in, that said they can't wait to hear it. They can't wait to see it.
Oh, that's nice. Thank you, people. I'm excited to do it. It's a new format. Like I said, we're going to learn a little bit as we go. Hopefully everybody has patience with us as we learn, but yeah, I'm excited. The episodes we recorded so far. It's just great to have that type of discussion. I think it's the type of content people really enjoy.
Great having you on today, Andy. Thank you so much.
Chris, thanks for having me.
And it's a lot of fun having you here. And I know that the viewers and listeners got a lot out of it today. So I always close like this. Hey, keep selling and have fun doing it. Thanks again, Andy. We'll see you soon.
Thank you.
Bye. This is the reason why you should buy. And we're not asking the most important question, the reason why it was important for them, in their heart of hearts. Like, that's a sale. Then we're going to see results, the mindset. Going into every opportunity, saying to yourself, I would love to have the business, but I don't need the business. When they talk about building their organization just through referral, that means they're missing it